It's time to talk books again. Hi, welcome to the Jellyfish Journals. My name is Susie, and I'm ready to just go ahead and jump into some books. Oh, I forgot. Pillow Bubba is here with us, so he's gonna hang out and just be a cat. That's a pillow that's stuffed. So anyway, let's jump right in. One of the audiobooks that I listened to was Phil Collins' memoir, Not Dead Yet. I have been a huge Phil Collins fan for as long as I can remember. Not huge to the point where I have every album he's ever made. Not huge to the point of I know all about Genesis and have all of those albums too from his days in that group. But huge in the sense that he's my favorite artist. That's probably not very huge. Anyway, I do love Phil Collins' music. And I really wanted to listen to his memoir. I wanted to know, like, what's his story? Where'd he come from? What's he been up to? And I loved it. He narrates the audiobook, which is why I leaned towards that. I will say I need to go find like the actual physical copy. Because if it's anything like Viola Davis's, there might be pictures and things in there that obviously you don't get in an audiobook. But I really thought it was great. It was kind of cool to hear how he was raised on the drums and how he became a part of Genesis and then how he became the lead of Genesis and so on. And just, what are his thoughts on life choices, life regrets, and the things that have gone well. And it was just kind of cool. And I was able to walk away from the book with a fun fact about Phil Collins, which I won't share here because it was a happy surprise in the book. Check it out if you're a fan too. Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern is another one of those really unusual, random kind of stories. Like, I have never read anything like this before. So you've got these two dudes and they basically have this contest where they each choose a competitor and raise that competitor, and they train that competitor in magic. But it's not like magic like alakazam and saying spells. It's like mind games and mind tricks. The arena, if you will, where these two competitors are to battle it out, so to speak, is the Night Circus. And it's this circus that only shows up at night. Everything in this circus is amazing and different and unique. And I think what knocked it down to 4 stars for me was just the ending. It's not a twist. It's more like a left turn that sort of doesn't make sense to make a left turn there. I feel like most readers, as you are reading a story, you're already kind of thinking, ooh, I wonder if it's going to end like this. I wonder if it's going to end like that. And I think it was a little confusing and a little kind of womp for me. So that's the Night Circus. I listened to my first Lisa Scottolini story called Every 15 Minutes. And this one was really good. I gave this 5 stars. I really loved this book. So there's this psychiatrist, I can never remember which one it was. And he gets this patient who has these dark thoughts. And basically every 15 minutes, this patient has to count to 15 or something, or say the months of the year backwards, or I don't know, something like that. But he has to do it every 15 minutes, or he's afraid those dark thoughts will consume him. Well, while the psychiatrist or psychologist or whatever is treating this patient, all of these other things start happening in his life. Everything is just going wrong. And throughout the course of the book, he is trying to figure out what's going on, why it's happening to him, and he's trying to correct all the wrongs that are happening. And I thought this book was just excellent from start to finish. The only digital book that I've finished recently is Tiny Daggers. This one was really cool. This was my femme fatale thriller trope selection. It's really, really well done. I would say there are so many different twists in this. And like I said, I tend to be somebody who's trying to figure it out as I read. And as I was going through the book, I was kind of like, you know, like, I mean, again, if you read enough thrillers, you don't trust anybody. I mean, am I right? Like, you read enough thrillers or mysteries and you're like, oh, I bet the, you know, 99-year-old little lady who can't talk, walk, or, you know, hear anybody, she did it, you know, whatever. I don't know. But I think you suspect everybody. And in this one, I just didn't even know who to suspect. I just didn't know what was going on. I used to live in South Florida, so it was kind of fun. Like, I was totally not in that world. They had a lot of money and all that. I did not grow up with a lot of money, but I loved when they talked about lounging by the pool or going to the beach and those kinds of things. So that was kind of fun to read. Definitely an excellent 5-star Amazon Prime read. The Missing Half by Ashley Flowers was another really good thriller with a lot of interesting twists. Now, I gave this book 4 stars because a lot of it I did see coming. This girl, her sister went missing ages ago, and she meets this other girl whose sister had also gone missing, and so they decide to go in together to try to solve what happened, since of course the police failed them. I say that very sarcastically, but that seems to be a common thing. Nobody ever trusts the police to do their job. As I got further through, I just kind of started to lose interest. I just didn't care as much what had happened to the girls. I didn't care if the sisters figured it out. And I don't know if that's because the author didn't write characters I could relate to, or if I just got tired of them being so cranky. I don't really know, but I thought it was a good thriller. I picked up another Ashley Flowers book called All Good People Here, which is coming up on my TBR very soon. So if I don't read it this month, I might read it next month, but I'm going to read it before the end of 2025. And this was kind of just like a taste. Okay. The absolute crummiest book that I have read recently was The Miniaturist. Hear me out. This chick gets married to this guy. It's like a historical fiction, so it's pretty old. And it's in the Netherlands, which is where my best friend is from. So I was like, oh, this is going to be awesome. This girl marries this guy, and as a wedding gift, he gives her this like cabinet. All I keep thinking is curio, but that's not what I called it when I told my mom about the book. I cannot think of what it's called, but it's like a little cabinet. I imagine like glass front doors, and it's a replica of the house that she just moved into to live with him. Well, the write-up on the back of the book, which I don't have anymore, I got rid of it. I dropped it off in a little free library. The back of it talks about how it's this perfect replica of her house and all the furniture and all this other stuff. And her new husband's sister lives in the house with them, and she's kind of like scary, like not horror scary, but like, I don't know, Miss Hannigan scary, I guess, like bossy and rough around the edges and all that. And so the reason I picked up this book is because the back of it makes it seem like something happens and then she has to work together with this really tough sister. And there's something interesting that has to do with this little miniature version of the house she's living in and all the miniatures. And I'm just going to tell y'all now, I felt like that was such a tiny part of the book. It did not deserve to be the back blurb. I personally felt gypped. I love miniatures. I've already read a book about miniatures this year. I was really excited, but it was so stupid the way it was all explained in the end. Most of the book, guys, most of the book had nothing to do with the miniatures or the house. Like, there was this storyline that had to do with the husband and some other people and the sister a bit. And then there was this storyline that had to do with the new bride and the miniature house. Just bleh. I didn't like it at all. Yuck. I also listened to Do Not Disturb from Frida McFadden. I have been collecting all of her books. I don't own this one, and so I listened to Do Not Disturb. I gave this book 5 stars. I thought there were some interesting twists. It had a very, I don't know, I want to say it gave me Hitchcock vibes. I don't think it was as good as anything Hitchcock has done, but it gave me very Psycho / Rear Window vibes. You know, this woman is sort of on the run, just trying to leave town, and she finds this abandoned hotel. I keep calling it abandoned. There is a caretaker that will rent out rooms, but really nobody ever stays there. There's like one permanent resident, but like nobody ever stays there, right? It's like off the beaten path. Nobody needs to be there. And the caretaker's wife lives across the street, but she has MS, I believe. It was MS. And so she doesn't come over to the hotel ever, but she watches what happens from her window across the street. I don't know, it was really kind of good. I was totally sucked in, totally interested in it. And I love that it took place in the winter too. I mean, it's just starting to get fall here, but I'm ready for some snow. And so reading about some snow and cars being buried in snow, not that I've ever experienced that, but it sounded really cool and I liked it. Another kind of crummy-ish book was Schooled. This was a book that I found in a little free library, and not gonna lie, I loved the spine. It was all like stripy, like the bag on the front cover. This was about this girl who decides to give up a high-paying job as a lawyer or something and decides to become a teacher. I'm a teacher. I'm like, ooh, very noble of you, you know, all the things. Well, she gets a job at this elite private school and then finds out it's not what she thought. And when I say a private school, I mean like really, really hoity-toity private school. I'm thinking like Chilton from Gilmore Girls, but like even hoitier-toitier than that. The parents don't want their kids to do work in class. They want the kids to bring work home. And she finds out the reason why is because the tutors that these parents can hire will help, here I go again, the kids with their homework. So she signs up to be one of these tutors, and then the money starts rolling in. It was a good concept. There's really nothing memorable about it. I gave it 3 stars, so it wasn't as bad as The Miniaturist, but it wasn't great either. I read this book by B.A. Paris called The Therapist. Now, B.A. Paris wrote one of my all-time favorite thrillers, Behind Closed Doors. I think I'm just hungry for something else that hits me as hard as Behind Closed Doors did. This book was not it. It was good. I gave it 5 stars. It was a good book. Just didn't quite have that kapow at the end that the other book has. This girl, I always say girl, this woman and her boyfriend, they move into this really private gated community where there's like 12 houses in a kind of cul-de-sac-y thing, and they're numbered 1 through 12, and that's the entire neighborhood. She starts meeting some of the neighbors in this little tiny community and finding things out, and there's all these weird secrets and stuff. I really liked it. I thought the twists were really interesting, and I think B.A. Paris does a good job of like pacing out her book. So you never like what was it? Like the missing half I was saying earlier, I just kind of got tired of it. I don't get tired of B.A. Paris's books. I feel like the pacing's really well. So right when you're like, okay, come on already, what happened? There's the twist, and now you're like interested again. So I did give this book 5 stars, and I'm going to keep reading her books. Sometimes I Lie by Alice Feeney was kind of strange. This lady's in a coma, and while she's in this coma, she's very aware of people visiting her in the hospital and things that are going on around her. She just can't communicate or open her eyes or anything. Yeah, I don't know what much to say about this, except I got pretty confused by the end. And there were a lot of parts I had to read again. I think there is a possibility for an author to over twist things. I gave it 4 stars. I would reread this book again. I actually did mean to go online and go find one of those websites where they kind of explain the book to you so that at least I would feel like I understood it. I loved the parts where she's lying there in this coma and people around her are talking about her and talking to her, and she's hearing snippets of things. And so while she's in this coma, she's trying to make sense of what she's hearing. I have heard from a couple other people that they felt the same way after reading this book, which made me feel a little better, unless they're just being nice. All right, one more book to go. And this was probably one of my biggest shockers of the year, Lessons in Chemistry. I picked this book up in a little free library last year sometime. I just thought the premise sounded kind of interesting, and it was one of those books I knew people were talking about. And again, great cover. And my mom had said she started reading it, I think earlier this year. And I think it ended up being a DNF for her. She didn't finish the book, but I'm really trying to encourage her to pick it back up again in the future. Mom, I think you might like that book. So you've got this woman who, I want to say it's like in the 50s or 60s. It was during that time when women just weren't taken very seriously, but she's a chemist, she's a scientist, and she goes to school for it. She gets her degree, she does all this stuff, and it's a man's world. And so she's trying to be taken seriously in a man's world. As she's going through all of this, her life takes this unexpected twist, and she ends up being the host of a cooking show where she applies chemistry to the art of cooking. She becomes this kind of icon for women. She's not only encouraging women to think more seriously and pursue things that they're truly interested in pursuing, but she's also completely being herself the entire time. Like, she refuses to change who she is for anybody. This is definitely a book I would pick up and reread. It is a strong contender for my book of the year. I laughed throughout the book. I didn't cry. I'm not much of a book crier. Mom, you should give that book another try, and anybody else who's interested. That's going to do it for this video. Thanks for watching. If you have any book recommendations for me, please leave them in the comments below. I'm always looking for recommendations. If you've read any of these and have your own comments, I would love to read those too. I love talking about books. I'm going to go ahead and plop up here real quick the star ratings I gave all the books I mentioned in this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you are interested. Most of my content is journaling, but I love talking books. I hope that you have a wonderful day. Bye.